I'm going to ask, well, maybe you should, I'm in the chair. I gotta.
Okay. I just thought there was a thing in here where it said, okay, yeah, I gotta find it.
Good evening, members of committee. I see that we have quorum, and I call this regular meeting of the Town of Pelham General Committee for Monday, August 13th, 2012 to order. I'd like to also welcome those in attendance from the public that are here. It has been moved by Councillor Durley, seconded by Councillor Ribbiak, that the agenda for the August 13th, 2012 regular meeting of General Committee be adopted. Are there any amendments to that agenda? Councillor Durley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One item, if we look at the Article C under Corporate Services, the issue report CAO 8/12 regarding the community dog park, that I believe should be an issue that is under the CIS division rather than Corporate Services. So I would like to move that we move it from Corporate Services to CIS.
Okay, thank you. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Papp. Discussion. I would acknowledge, I see that the chair of the Pelham Dogs Group is here, so that'll be a change in the agenda if this is approved. Going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion, that amendment is carried. Any other amendments? I'm going to call the question as amended to the agenda. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. That motion for our agenda as amended is carried. Then we move to business subdivisions, and the first is corporate services. Chair. I'm sorry, thank you very much. I got ahead of myself here. The first is disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Do any members have any pecuniary interest they'd like to disclose at this time? Could that be noted in the minutes, please? Thank you. We do not have any presentation. Councillor Pop?
I'm not sure, but I'll, maybe I shouldn't. I am a dog owner. Don't bark at me. So I'll participate. It's not a conflict.
Thank
There's
you.
no pecuniary interest.
Thank you.
I don't make any money off of this. The dog cost me a fortune.
Thank you, Councillor. There are no presentations or delegations, nor are there any items for block approval. So next we'll move to business subdivisions. The first is corporate services, chaired by Councillor Durley. Councillor Durley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and welcome to Corporate Services. We have a few things on our plate this evening. First of all, moved by Councillor Papp, seconded by Councillor Ribbiak, that report TR 50/12 charitable receipt policy be received, and that the recommendation contained therein be approved as follows. That policy P 300-03 attached to report TR 50/12 be approved. Any questions or comments regarding that motion? Straightforward. We're finally getting something on paper that we haven't had before, and this is a policy that will be followed. Councillor Pat.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the Treasurer and CAO. Thank you for bringing this to the attention, because I don't think there was anything on paper. I knew this did exist for municipalities, but I think most people didn't understand it. So thank you for making it formally a policy that they understand we can issue charitable receipts. Thank you.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That carries. Next before us, moved by Councillor Papp, seconded by Councillor Ribbiak, that report TR 51/12, the 2013 budget schedule be received, and that the recommendation contained therein be approved as follows. That the 2013 budget schedule attached to report TR 51/12 be approved. Everybody has that in front. The process will begin with a public meeting, if in fact this is passed, to receive public input on Tuesday, October the 9th. That will be the start of the whole process, which will end up finally on March the 4th with water and wastewater budgets being approved at that particular time. Questions or comments? And I assume that this, if passed, will certainly be on our website so everybody can have a look at it. Okay? Seeing no questions or comments, I call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That carries. that does it for having moved the other issue from this to, have we got another? Oh, I'm sorry, permissive grant procedure. Okay, jumping ahead of myself. Moved by Councillor Clark, seconded by Councillor Papp, that report TR 49/12, permissive grant procedure be received, and that the recommendation contained therein be approved as follows. That procedure AP 300-04 attached to report TR 49/12, permissive grants be approved. The report is in front of you. Any questions or comments? Councillor Papp.
Again, I thank you for listening to us and making this change. I think it's very worthwhile. I think we'll find it a lot smoother. So to you, Madam Treasurer, and to the CAO, a great move. Thank you.
Ms. Grant?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I agree. It's a good policy. It's important to have something like this, especially the evaluation criteria, which I think there was an evaluation process in the past. I think council has seen some of that occasionally, but this really tightens up the evaluation, the way the evaluations are done for the permissive grants, which I think is very helpful, and it lends itself to a type of a scoring system. I know, Mr. Chair, we use something similar for the Mayor's Gala, for instance, and the Community Foundation uses something similar. Other groups across the, Council Papp is nodding, the United Way, etc., uses a similar type of scoring method. So I think it's an important move forward, and appreciate it coming back to us in this way. I would like to just tease out, Mr. Chair, the one point about 2 members being set on a committee. We are looking at 2 members of council being set on a separate committee to help evaluate. We are looking, and we just talked about it at council, and we did refer it to our next council meeting, but a change in our procedure bylaw to get away from the smaller kind of committees and bringing things up so that all members of council are involved in the discussion. In fact, we just had that discussion, a couple of members weren't here and we wanted their input on things. I think this is something of that nature as well, Mr. Chair, that perhaps staff can, the procedure should be that staff come forward with the scoring and the top recommendation based on that scoring, and then all of council can be part of the evaluation process where we say, well, that's great, but we think this or whatever. I'd like to see that, Mr. Chair, that all members of council, as opposed to us choosing 2 members to be part of this evaluation team. I think it'd be important for all members of council to be part of the evaluation, and it would come in a special report and we would debate it. No doubt it could be in camera because it about identifiable individuals and et cetera. But Mr. Chair, I'd like to see that. I'd like to hear from my colleagues to see if they agree with me, and I'd be willing to make that amendment, or someone else could make that amendment.
First of all, perhaps I would like to get comments from staff, either treasurer or CAO, as to streamlining with 2 people there is the idea that a smaller group can effectively do the evaluation. It does come to council for final approval anyway, like that isn't the problem, but the evaluation, Mr. CAO, could you, or through you to the treasurer, perhaps Madam Treasurer, you could start the conversation.
Conversation through you, Mr. Chair. The permissive grant evaluation criteria is no different. This is the scorecard that we used previously. It was never brought back to council for consideration of the scorecard. It was brought back on our final recommendations. So it could, it's council's wishes how we could operate. We could do the evaluation, the CAO and myself, with the assessment criteria, doing the eligibility, bringing back the recommended permissive grant awards in a report to council, but then including the scorecards with it, so that council is aware of where they got the points or whatever, and much of the similar format that we did in the past, except that the scorecards were never brought forward in the report. So it's absolutely council's decision on how they want to proceed with this process. So I'll leave it up to council.
Would staff feel more comfortable having 2 members of council sitting there as assisting in the evaluation process, or is this unnecessary? Mr. CAO, perhaps?
Yes, Mr. Chair, the administration would be more than comfortable doing it on an administrative level. and then making a recommendation to council for approval and providing at the same time all of the information and the tools that were used to come to the conclusion. It is taxpayer dollars being awarded, and council must be involved in that process. But the preliminary legwork certainly can be handled quite comfortably by the administration.
As I recall, in the debate that brought it to this point, one of the considerations from a member or two of council was that at that point in time, there was no direct involvement of council, and I think that was one of the major criticisms of the policy at the time. Now, I'm just wondering if, are there comments from members of council that, having seen the actual scorecard evaluation, is this sufficient, or is it necessary that you feel that a member of council should be there? Because I recall quite vividly, one of the big criticism was that, that it was a, basically from administration to council, and this is it, approve it or not type of thing. So, I'm just wondering, any comments on that? Councilor Pat?
I'm the one who brought this forward simply because I'm trying to ensure that we're seen as being totally transparent in the whole process and understanding. But I'm also willing to, amend or compromise on it, that if the administration handles the initial review and you bring it to all of us as a committee of the whole, and we have a chance to look at it, as long as we know how you did it, what went into it, I don't need to elaborate, and we're comfortable with the results, and for that matter, we can debate it, because it will be a matter inside camera. I'm comfortable with that, and I'm good with that, as long as we have that sort of that sense of, if you want to call it screening, prior to us just coming with and it's no disrespect, coming with a report and say, these are the grants we're going to give out. This way, we have a chance beforehand, you do the reevaluations, we look at them, we agree, disagree, or whatever we come up with. So I have no problem with it, and you can maybe just strike under the procedural guideline the reference to the two members of council.
Would you like to make that as amendment?
Yes, I would.
Okay, seconder for that, Mr. Mayor? Okay.
I'm good with it.
Madam Clerk? You did get that? Okay, so the amendment is to strike and two members of council from paragraph 1 of P 300/04 permissive grants general. Everybody understand? Any questions or comments regarding that? Motion to accept the amendment. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? It carries. Any other discussion to the motion as amended? Seeing none, I'll call the question on the motion as amended. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That carries. And now I will turn the seat over to Councillor Clark in CIS division.
Welcome to Community and Infrastructure Services. Got a motion in front of us here from Councillor Durley, seconded by Councillor Ribbiak, that report CIS 24/12 sidewalk snow clearing review be received, and that the recommendation contained therein be approved as follows. That the committee recommend to council that the town clear snow from all sidewalks commencing November 1st, 2013. Comments or questions? Mr. Mayor?
Thank you very much. I do have a couple of questions, and I tried to read the report a couple of times. It wasn't clear to me. So the first is the alternatives seem to be not mutually exclusive. So we're not comparing apples to apples in the sense of the amounts.
This
So
question is
just
for Mr. Mano?
yeah. So for clarity, option A, status quo. That's what we're currently doing. We would just continue with that. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
The recommendation before us is for option C, which is an additional. I'm trying to find the amount here.
Here.
Thank you, Tom. I'm trying to do it on the computer, but so that's 80,000 to continue with the status quo. Then refinements of the status quo or additions to that would be alternative 2 and alternative 3. So what's being recommended is an additional $88,000. Is that correct?
Well, it's 80,000 to do everything, I think, is the way the report's written.
8,000 more, 80,000 to do it this way, 80,000 to do it else.
Okay, so.
Difference
thank
of
you.
8,000.
A difference of 8,000.
Well, just, yeah.
So it is apples to apples. It's
That's
status
yes.
quo to,
Yes.
okay. Okay, well, that's great news. The second question, thank you, John. The second is, I noticed in the report that it's, the capital equipment is not factored into that additional differential. Do we have an idea of what that annualized capital cost would be?
For the last alternative?
Yes.
Is it not in there? I thought it was,
Oh, it was in there. I thought it wasn't. Okay, there we go. I said I tried to find it, and Councillor Durley's assisted me here, and Councillor Ribbiak as well, so I appreciate those.
Paper as opposed to
Thank you.
computer.
Yeah, well, that's what it is. It's a computer here. Thank you. Okay.
Any further questions or comments? Councillor Durley?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Looking at $8,000 difference in doing all of the sidewalks in town, I think that's fantastic, and you know, for that little amount of money, it's you know, I think it's well worthwhile, and we will certainly get away from a lot of the challenges that we face with the snow clearing bylaw, and I think this will clear it up. Congratulations on bringing this forward, Mr. Mann. It's to me a very good report.
Yeah.
Councillor Ribbiak?
Thank you. I have a question for Mr. Mantle as well, and I'm sure that it's a very simple and cheap explanation for this. But I do note that not all streets with sidewalks are indicated on the map. The map I'm reporting to is attachment number 5 of 5. And I note that in a very quick look at this, I noted that at least one street, I think it's Martha Court, which has sidewalks, is not included as one that would be cleared. I'm assuming that's because it's still in the subdivision stage and not been accepted by the town yet, or why?
I think when we started the report, there was no sidewalk there, so the report's been kind of an ongoing project. So this, because I think the sidewalk was just constructed over the past few months.
Well, it has been constructed, if I may, Mr. Chair, it has been constructed piecemeal over the past several years. And it's always a surprise to me that the ends actually meet, given the length of time it takes from some of the segments to be joined. But I take it that would be part of the over. I mean, it wouldn't be a spectacular difference in cost.
No, it would be included.
It would be included, and I don't know whether there are any other streets then in Pelham that might not have been included in the estimate. But I'm assuming that if there are any missing, that'd be pretty insignificant overall.
Correct.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Chair, I apologize, just more clarity on this amortization capital budget. The last paragraph of the report talks about the selection of alternative 3 requires the purchase of a piece of equipment that has not been included in the 2012 budget. It is recommended this piece of equipment be included in the 2013 budget. And yet, the costs would be amortized into the program. So I'm trying to get my head around this, because we would be accounting for it within the budget. So if we can just have a comment on that, and also, is there a possibility of moving this forward for this snow season if we get any snow?
Mr. Mao?
It was just simply a mathematical issue, just to show how the expenditures would balance out over the years. You didn't want to have one large capital cost at the beginning of the project, and it ended up very cheap after that. So just
Right.
balancing it out over the lifespan of the piece of equipment.
And thank you. And what about the possibility of starting for this snow season?
Well, the equipment would have to be purchased first, so that'd have to be allocated in a budget somehow.
Okay. The treasurer's shaking her head, no, there's no money in the budget.
Okay, just for clarity, this is for clearing snow starting November 1st, 2013. So we put the money aside, then next year we buy a machine and then start then.
Okay.
Can I have one question from the chair for Mr. Mano? Just regarding the clearing of the downtown Pelham Street here. I mean, we just had all that work done. It went through its first winter, which we didn't have a lot of snow. How is that being dealt with this year?
That would be included as part of a tender. We have to have a tender still for our, the cul-de-sac type streets. Parking stalls, street side parking stalls will be done, parking lots will still be done as a contracted service. And we can include that, the sidewalks adjacent to those parking stalls at the same time.
Okay, just to make sure I understand it, then the downtown core that got renovated will be cleared? Is
Yes,
that what I'm hearing?
that's
Everything, the
correct.
sidewalks, everything?
Exactly, we'll include that as part of that tender that we plan to do this fall. Yes, it'll be done this winter as part of that. And it'll include sidewalks and street side parking at the same time.
Okay, great, thank you. Anyone else? No? Okay, any more questions? Then we'll call. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Mr. Chair.
Yep.
By passing this, we in effect are putting in an expenditure for a 2013 budget that we haven't approved. Is that what I'm hearing? Because we have passed this, then in effect, it's a year from now, we're preparing our 2013 budget. I don't want to be caught in a procedural nightmare here. Help me. Have I got you dumbfounded?
I can answer.
Or Mr. CAO, either one.
Mr. Chairman, I think that
Yeah.
the report is indicating that the council acknowledges this is the policy direction and is
Right.
earmarking money. However, the official expenditure cannot be spent until the budget is approved by council.
Exactly.
So I guess you could say budget trumps report. So I don't think that you have a fear as far as
Yeah.
superseding the budget process.
Yeah, I thank you, Mr. CEO. I think that's what I was looking for, that implied in this is subject to budget approval.
Yes.
I guess I would have just added so that it's not, things happen. And I've been in another setting where things were approved, but they were not budget approved. And then the expenditures couldn't proceed. So as long as that's clear, and I'm comfortable with that. And the other comment is just, wow, Councilor Durley and I have been around for a long time, not as long as we'd want to make mention. This debate has gone on for years. How many years we've talked about this, and finally, congratulations, we brought it to a head, and it seems like it's financially viable to do. And I appreciate seeing that. Thank you.
Okay, any further comments or questions? Seeing none, pose the question. All those in favor?
Budget trumps this.
Councilor Papp?
Yep,
Okay,
I'm in.
Okay. Approved, carried. Okay, another motion from Councilor Ribbiak, seconded by Councilor Durley, that report CIS 2512, 2012 rural speed limit review be received, and that the recommendation contained therein be approved as follows. That the committee recommend to council that speed limits be approved as noted in Schedule C of this report. Comments or questions? Councilor Ribbiak?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just some clarification on one point that I picked up on as I read through the report. There was mention made of Sawmill, and the fact that in our last meeting, we had resolved that we would post the speed limit on Sawmill, and that the speed limit we were going to post was 50. I don't think that that suggestion was meant to make the speed limit 50 in perpetuity. It was to be posted as 50 because that, in fact, and this report bears it out, was the speed limit at the time. If the result of our deliberations now is that speed limits rurally generally should be 60, then I don't think we should exclude Sawmill from that consideration just because last time we decided that we would post the speed limit, and at that time the speed limit was 50. If we determine that the speed limit generally should be 60, I think Sawmill could be 60, and we could post it as 60. I think that's what we meant when we went through that discussion. So just wanted to clarify that one point in the report, which seems to suggest that if we were to adopt 60 everywhere, but not Sawmill, because Sawmill has received some sort of special consideration as of the last meeting, that was not meant to be the case.
Mr. Manow, do you have a comment for that?
It was just meant, that comment was made just to bring it to council's attention that we had made that decision already, so that's why we weren't going to change the decision we made to make it 50. So the schedule would be identified as being 50.
Mr. Chair, if I may clarify that, I think we meant to post the speed limit as it existed on Sawmill. It wasn't a decision to make Sawmill 50.
If I could, Councilor
Yes.
Brett? I had a conversation with Mr. Manow today, and maybe he could explain the software. I believe this is what we're talking about, correct?
That's correct. I think there's an attachment to the report there that shows the piece of software, like one of the worksheets from the software that identifies, compares the risk factors with the recommended speed. And I think when we did Sawmill Road, did that section on that worksheet, it came up as a 60 kilometer per hour was the recommended speed limit. So we've acknowledged that. However, if council wants to have it as 60 or 50, it's entirely your decision.
Again, I'm not sure that we're on the same wavelength here. I think that what we determined last time was that we would post the speed limit, and because the speed limit was 50, that's what was going to be posted. If at that time, or if the speed limit had been 60, I think Councillor Kersey's recommendation would have been to post the speed limit, which would have been 60. So I just want to be sure that as we go through this, Sawmill isn't considered some sort of special case on that basis. The discussion we had was with respect to the stop sign at that corner, and in addition to the stop signs, it was a question of posting speed limits, but only because, 50 only because that was the speed limit.
Okay. Mr. Manow, you're saying for us to accept Schedule C. On Schedule C, what is the speed limit on that street?
I think we've identified it as 50. You can amend that
Okay.
schedule.
No, I just wanted to.
That schedule's a typical schedule that's used in the bylaw format for speed limit controls. You simply identify the name of the street and from where to what point and what the prevailing speed should be. So you can amend that schedule, and that'll form part of the bylaw.
The reason why it's 50 is because we asked for it to be 50. It's not because the software came it out at 50?
That's correct.
The software came it out at 60?
That's correct.
Okay. So then I guess we need to determine if we want it to be 50 or 60 is what you're asking.
Actually, I just wanted to clarify what we had decided to do last time. And if I'm failing at clarifying it, then maybe I should
Maybe I'm not getting it, I don't
withdraw.
know.
But
Okay. So where it stands is if we take 60, if we approve Schedule C, the speed limit there will be 50,
Correct.
which is what we wanted at our last meeting.
no, that's not what we wanted in our last meeting. What we wanted in our last meeting was that the speed limit be posted.
At,
Well, because the speed limit was 50, then it would have been posted as 50.
If it was 100, it'd be posted at 100.
okay.
That's right, if that had been the case. I think Councillor Kersey's point was that as an additional safety measure, that road actually be posted at its speed limit, which happened to be 50 at that time. We are now looking at speed limits across the entire town. All I'm asking for is that we don't consider Sawmill as being some sort of an exceptional case just because on that road, the speed limit happens to be posted.
So what you're asking for then is to accept C, but amend it so that the speed limit on Sawmill is 60.
If that's the measure that it takes, then yes.
I think that's correct. That's the measure, right?
Okay.
Okay, so we're asking for an amendment. So we need a seconder for that then? Councillor Papp, you got that? So it will be, all of you,
All in favor of the amendment?
all in favor of the amendment? Well, we gotta go till we get your amendment. So then the amendment will be?
That sawmill will be at
660.
It's 60, okay. All right, so all in favor? Okay, so the amendment will be that Sawmill will be 60 as well as the rest. Okay, all in favor? Carried. So-
Mr. Chair, just
Sorry?
to the amended motion?
Sorry?
That was the amendment, right? Yes.
Okay. So now we're doing it to the
I
amendment?
just want to speak to the amended motion. And that is, I want to thank staff for bringing this forward. I know that it was something that a couple of years ago we put into the budget, recognizing that speed was an issue in rural areas, that comprehensive study be done. That comprehensive study was done and undertaken, and the results are before us. It does provide a better way of dealing with speed as opposed to the one-offs, because the one-offs, as we just found out, are not only sometimes confusing, but also have implications on other roadways. So it's better to look at all of the roadways in a comprehensive way and to deal with the speed in that way. So I'm very pleased that we've done that, and I'm pleased the report is here, and I'm pleased to support the motion as amended, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Durley.
Thank you, Councillor Clark, Mr. Chair. Perfect. The work there is good. All of the guidelines are there. Compliance and enforcement are the two issues now that come to mind. If you can post it at whatever you want, but if the pedal goes to the metal, it's certainly not going to be there. What steps can we take to ensure compliance and enforcement? We've already talked to the regional police many times, and they've beefed up some speed traps and so on and so forth. However, it still is a problem. No matter what you post it at, people will going to be traveling at whatever they choose to travel at. And again, this to me was the issue, the compliance and the enforcement, rather than the actual speed limit, because people are traveling, they're speeding on just about every road in town. What can we do to deal with that situation?
Okay, thank you for your comments. Okay, any further comments or questions? So we are voting on the amended motion. All those in favor? Carried. Okay. Motion from Councillor Durley, seconded by Councillor Papp. That report, I guess that's going to be CIS.
It's
Oh,
still
it's
CAO.
Okay, COA 812, Community Dog B or C. And that the recommendation contained therein be approved as follows. That committee recommends that council receive the dog park report and take the following actions. Direct administration to develop a partnership agreement with Pelham Dogs for council approval. Approve $15,000 for the retention of the appropriate consultant to prepare a formal design drawing for the park with the expectation that the park will be shovel-ready for the summer of 2013. Endorse Pelham Dogs fundraising activities. And 4, direct administration to seek permission to utilize the required lands from Niagara Region. Comments or questions? Councilor Ribbiak?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wonder whether the CAO might be able to explain, if this dog park goes ahead, how the costs will be covered by the users. I went through the report. I'm not sure I was entirely clear on that. Perhaps you could provide an explanation.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, through you, the suggestion is that a fee be attached to the dog licensing cost. So when you buy a dog license on an annual basis, there'd be a service fee attached to that, which would generate dollars required to do the operation, the town's portion of the operation and maintenance. The onus would be on Pelham Dogs to undertake significant amounts of maintenance in the park, like the most significant one, ensuring that the park is kept clean and that dog feces are properly collected and disposed of. Our role would be in a supervisory role to ensure that was taking place. So the idea behind it is part of the recommendation that there be a partnership agreement established between Pelham Dogs and the town that outlines these requirements and the amount of money that it would take. Additional money for maintenance and operations would be raised through the additional service fee on the dog license. The advantage to that is that the dog license, once purchased, would give a annual membership to the park for the dog and the owner to use the facility, and there would be sort of a punch card lock on the gate, and you would be given the access, and then you would be allowed to use the park within the existing dog park rules as established by the town.
So I'm to understand, if I may, Mr. Chair, I'm to understand that dog license fees will increase for all dog owners who apply for a license, regardless of whether they have any interest in a dog park.
Yes, that would be one option, although, you know, if there was a voluntary option where you could just purchase the membership, there's something to be considered. I think that the establishment of a dog park would be utilized or potentially utilized by many dog owners, but also a way to generate some revenue so that non-dog owners are not subsidizing a park that's, so you could say, special interest driven.
Go ahead, Councilor Ribbiak.
If I may. That deals, I think, with operational cost and capital cost of setting this up. How is that cost going to be picked up by the users?
Again, through Mr. Chair, the idea would be to sit down and come up with an agreement with the Pelham Dogs. The significant fundraising efforts would have to be undertaken by that organization to afford this. The suggestion or recommendation at this point is that the $35,000 that has been earmarked, I suppose, in the existing budget be used for the design and the other steps outlined. But once the design and the costing for the actual completion of the park, and obviously a phased-in approach, the operating agreement between Pelham Dogs and the town would be, you know, triggers on fundraising. So they would have to raise a certain percentage of the cost of the capital, and nothing would proceed until that donation level was reached. That would trigger a phase to be implemented, and you carry on from a multi-year perspective based on that formula.
So can we be comfortable in feeling that well, if not the entire cost, I hesitate to say lion's share of the cost will be actually borne by those who use the park as opposed to those who would never use the park?
That's the suggestion, the model that we would be looking to implement through the agreement phase would be to put that exact model into place so that you're generating revenue for the cost of construction, but also the operation and maintenance through people that have an interest in that facility, and not as a general capital budget where all taxpayers would be contributing to a facility that is very, again, special interest oriented, I guess, for lack of a better word. So, yeah, the share, the lion's share, or I guess the dog share of the fundraising would be done by the committee and approved by council before it proceeds.
One last question then with respect to cost. So what do you anticipate to be the cost to the town as opposed to that which would be borne by the users in the final analysis?
I think that we can do this project within the required, or within the budgeted $35,000. As I indicated in the report, there is some additional items that will have to be purchased or included in that, and I believe the amount was around $20,000 or $30,000. So I think roughly it would be a 50-50 cost sharing or partnership approach. That would be the strategy behind moving forward with the project.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I may have some other comments, but I appreciate the opportunity to ask the
Councilor
question.
Daly?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have one comment and one question. First of all, the question is, a lot of the dog licenses are not purchased through town hall. How are we going to be sure that we're going to get the revenues that are generated from that? And again, this could be incorporated with the agreement that you do with the dog group. And this is an item that I think is of utmost importance. Second to the one that I think the priorities is listed in the recommendation. Number 4 should come first because we need to seek permission to utilize the lands from the Niagara region. If we don't get that permission, none of this works until we find another site. So, I think that condition needs to be satisfied before we can look forward to getting a consultant or getting anything else. So, in fact, we have to look at perhaps those two issues I feel are important in the seeding of this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Durley. Mr. Mayor?
Thank you very much. Just a quick question first and then some comments. I didn't see it in the report, could have been there, but the size of the property, do we know the size of that? that property?
I'm not sure, I thought it was on there.
I don't believe through you, Mr. Chair, I don't believe the perimeter of the area has been marked on here. And I don't want to put the planner on the spot. I don't know if he'd know the answer right off the top of his head, but maybe he does.
I don't know the answer off the top of my head.
Okay. I'd be keen to know that when this perhaps comes to council. And to answer Councillor Durley's query about the region, I know that the region waste management has knows about this and has included it in its an option in its final plans for the park. They have to put in various plans, etc. For the former dump, I apologize, that it could be used for this type of function. So I think it's potentially available. It has to be obviously approved by the regional council, etc.
That's
And,
the hurdle, exactly.
Well, I think an easier hurdle than the Ministry of the Environment. So, but I just want to say, Mr. Chair, the report I think is excellent, and I want to commend the CAO and other staff who worked on this report, especially because it outlines some best practices. One of the visions of a strategic planning session that we had in our strategic plan is that we look to best practices. So in the report is outlined not only best practices in the region, in Ontario, but also internationally, and what's happening out there. So I want to commend staff for putting together this report, especially the CAO, looking broadly at solutions not only of our perhaps neighbor next door, but others around the world and around Canada. So thank you very much for including those best practices and really providing a comprehensive view on this entire issue. Mr. Chair, when I think about some of the other partnerships that we've had in the town, they've been very successful. They have been arranged on a 50-50 split. We look at the improvements to Centennial Park in the tennis area. That was a 50-50 arrangement, fundraising from the tennis group with the town funding that, and that's been very, very successful. Looking out here at this end of town to the farmers market, the addition of hydro to that market area of power, that was done on a 50-50 split where the town paid for half of the capital costs and the users, in this case the farmers market and the members, pay for 50% of that cost. We've done it again with one of the service clubs, improvements to the food booth and the park sign at Centennial Park in Fenwick with the Fenwick Lions. It's a 50-50 arrangement. So these types of arrangements, Mr. Chair, do work. And if I, again, going back to the tennis club, they are the ones that maintain that. You can see them out there in the spring, cleaning it up, fixing it up, those types of things. So these types of arrangements do work. I think it is also clear from this that it will be the users that generally are going to be paying for this. They receive the benefit, they pay for it out of this arrangement. There is some planning costs and maybe some other costs that will be captured by the town, but again, that's in keeping with what we've done in other situations in the past. So I'm not a dog owner, as Councillor Papp disclosed that he was. I'm not, but I am very supportive of this initiative. I know there's a number, certainly a number involved in the group, as is outlined in the report, more than 130 in that group alone, and so many other dog owners that aren't part of that group. I think this is a progressive way forward, and also looking broadly across the country at what are the best practices, but also taking into consideration some of the practices that we've done in the past with groups, both on the maintenance side and the capital side. So I'm very supportive, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Anyone else? Any other comments? If I want to speak to this, I can get Councillor Ribiak to take the chair. Councillor Ribiak, I'd like to speak to this. Take the chair.
Councillor Clark?
Okay, thank you, Councillor Ribiak. I'm not following the how we ended up where we are here today. The first time that we were approached to have a dog park, we voted it down. Then it came back with a slightly different wrapper on it. We decided to do some investigating on it. The third time we set aside in our budget, we set aside, or are to set aside in our budget $35,000 for, staff to prepare a report on the costs and what's involved with it. Tonight, we're asking for an additional 15, maybe not an additional 15, maybe that 15 comes out of that 35, I'm not sure. It does, okay. So that puts us at $35,000 that we've, set aside for this. I'm not really quite sure how it got to this point, because our first response was that, we didn't really want to spend the money on it. I mean, we've had other, people here ask us for skate parks. They came once and we never followed up on it. There's other areas that money could be spent. One night we spent 45 minutes talking about providing $750 to the farmer's market. And a point that Councillor Dirty made, like not all the licenses are sold here in town. So how are we truly going to police it unless we have someone there? And the big question, I guess, at the end of the day with this is before we really start spending any money on this, we should find out what our final costs are, or for us to invest $15,000 or $35,000 to find out that it's going to cost us $150, and we're not prepared to spend that. I don't know what our limit. What are we prepared to spend on it? So maybe those kind of questions should be asked before we go any further with this.
Comments, questions?
I'm just throwing a topic on there for discussion that I mean, there doesn't seem to be an end to this. Or am I missing something here?
To whom are you addressing the question, Councillor Clark? if I may?
I guess to the CAO, this is his report.
Through you, Mr. Chair. First of all, the $15,000 is part of the 35, so it would be an expenditure out of money that is currently in the budget. However, as I mentioned, it was earmarked pending specific council approval. The larger question of how did this report come was, in fact, by the presentation, I believe, that had been made with a supporting petition from the community group. The money had been earmarked, and that this issue needed to be addressed by council. Therefore, the report was put together with the recommendations the way it has been in order to gain some clarity on, first of all, the expenditure in the budget, but also to get an indication from council that this is a project that council wants to proceed with. So I don't know if that answers your questions. The total cost of the park is roughly outlined. However, there is some issues that need to be fleshed out a little bit more. However, having said that, there would not be any money expended unless it was specifically approved by council going forward on a phased-in approach. And as I've mentioned before, the appropriate fundraising levels have been met before any construction or any monies was expended outside of the initial park design.
Okay, I'm just bringing those questions forward, that's all. Okay, any further comments or questions? Councillor Ribbiak?
Thank you. I think I indicated that I may have other comments. I think you made reference to the fact that others have come here looking for money. And we've spent a great deal of time looking at it, and in some cases not found it for some causes that are worthy and having to do with needs that people have. We've talked about some other partnerships, and I think that if you look at things like the market or the tennis club, we're talking about activities that are near and dear and important to the well-being of the people who are involved in them. I think there's a difference in quality that I see, maybe others don't, but I see a difference in quality between a request for a partnership to deal with a tennis court for the recreation of people versus a dog park for the benefit of dogs, and yes, indeed, dog owners. But my vision of a dog park is dogs running leash-free. I think their owners get a whole lot more attention if, in fact, they're attached by leash to the dog and follow the dog around. So I think that there's a lot of benefit perhaps that goes to the dog. I note in the report the number of licenses that are sold, and I can't help but note that the number is very small. And that if the number of licenses actually represents the number of people in Pelham who are interested, we're talking about fewer than 1%. So to use the CAO's term, a special interest group, this is indeed a narrow and very special interest group, and I would think that within that group there are sufficient and adequate resources to meet the needs that they have. So if this is going to go forward, the only way that can go forward legitimately, in my view, is that there be pretty significant cost burden accepted by those who use it, and that we would want to see, that I would certainly want to see, that whatever agreements we go forward with do place a lion's share of the responsibility for the costs and for the operations on the few people who apparently would be interested in using it. I'm not sure that a dog park, a significant amount of resource from the town is necessarily warranted. I'm just not convinced of it. So, Mr. Chair, when this comes to a vote, I'm going to vote against it. And I'm not sure that it will fail, but I know that I've received representation from people who indicate they don't see a need for a dog park. They're not dog owners. Other pet owners aren't coming forward asking for places to exercise other pets. I understand that dogs have a particular need and characteristic. I am a dog owner. I exercise my dog as she needs it, and I personally don't see a particular need for it. So I'm going to vote against it, and I would expect that my vote against it would reflect at least some portion of the town of Pelham that probably doesn't see a need for this, and hopefully that's in the mix. Those are my comments.
Yeah, Mr. CEO?
Through you, Mr. Chair, just to clarify for information to council, the number of licenses sold are indicated only, in this report, indicate only the amount that are sold through our office specifically. There are several other remote locations where dog licenses are sold, where records are not remitted back to the town, so it is not an accurate number of the amount of licenses issued. It's simply a reflection of what we actually know for statistics. The reason for that is that the dollars collected in dog licensing fees go to the SPCA in order to pay for or make a contribution at least towards the enforcement of the animal control bylaw. They do that on our behalf, so there isn't a requirement for our bylaw officer to also be doing animal control. I think that there needs to definitely be a better method of tracking statistics. It's a very useful number for council. You should know how many licenses are out there. It'll give you an indication about compliance, amongst other things such as revenue. And with this proposed park fee being attached to the permit cost, would certainly be a requirement for better statistical and accounting records to be kept on this issue. So just for council's information on that matter.
Any other comments? Councillor Papp?
I understand quite adequately the whole aspect of special interest groups, and realize that when it comes to us choosing and picking where we place money, that it be done in the best interests of those that benefit the most. Where I'm a little confused, and maybe perhaps Mr. CEO and Madam Treasurer, I don't know why I was under the impression, and maybe I'm totally off on this, that we had not approved any money, that in fact by that, and I'm trying to recall the conversation, that it was not something, but the $35,000 expenditure, is it in fact, was it earmarked to develop the concept of a dog park, to endorse that, or in fact, because I think we're walking a fine line here, and I want to be clear that we're not getting ourselves into a situation where it may be seen as something that has, quite rightly, Councillor Ribiak, is special interest, but at the same token, this report is here, by adopting this, I think what we're saying is we're moving ahead with a dog park, subject to whatever considerations come into play. Now, that also means, as council always knows, and we have known, You can turn this down anytime you want. If it doesn't work, and the net result is that it's costing us money, which could be seen as money being spent for the wrong purpose, then we can always do that. Just that I thought we had progressed enough along the pathway to come to some sort of general agreement. Now, help me if I'm wrong, and Madam Treasurer, maybe you can help me, because I remember this debate that took place vaguely, I must say. And I was under the impression this was sort of done. I mean, not done, not to do a dog park, that we weren't going to go ahead. Help me out.
Through you, Mr. Chair, during the budget deliberations for 2012 capital, 35,000 was earmarked, tentatively earmarked for the
Tentatively.
dog park. It was put in and approved as part of the capital budget that a report would have to come back from
So this is the
the
report.
staff with a recommendation on either moving forward or what was going to happen with the dog park, and that's what this report is.
So the question is, do we want to move ahead with the dog park? Let's cut to the chase, or don't we?
That's the question.
That's what it boils down to. The costs in themselves are all part of that whole prerequisite or rationalization of it. But that's what it basically boils down to. Do we or don't we want to do this? And maybe perhaps part of that, if we decide we go ahead, that yes, and I agree, Mr. Mayor, we have had excellent relationships with some other community groups where the net cost to the town, some of us remember, was negligible because they did their own. But this whole, the value of it, and personally, I see value to this, as long as it does not take us into an area of expense that could be considered, not worthwhile. So that's what I'm reading into this whole thing. Is it, do we want this or don't we? Am I right or wrong?
That's right. That's the
No,
question.
I think you're,
I don't want to beat around how much it's going to cost, parameters. The whole thing is, do we believe in the concept of, in the development of a dog park in our town? So that's what it boils, and then we take all the necessary steps to deal with it.
Councillor Ribbiak.
Thank you. I think Councillor Papp has hit the nail on the head, but I would just modify that question. Do we want a dog park that the town pays the substantial part of? If a dog park was to be established in this town as a private enterprise, I would think that would be a marvelous thing, because the people who are interested in doing it are picking up all of the costs and are taking the initiative to do it for themselves. But really the reason the question is in front of us is because people want the town at large to pay. I suppose they would want a substantial part of it. We might want a whole lot less. And I think that's really the question. Do we want a dog park that the town will pay for? And I guess the quantum of the cost that will be picked up by the people who will be using it would be the deciding factor to me. Do we want a dog park in this town? Wouldn't mind a dog park in this town. Do we want the town to be paying for it, a substantial part of it? That's the part that I'm dealing with.
Okay. Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Chair, with all due respect to my colleague, that's not the report before us. The report before us is to spend some money to develop a plan, to try to develop a partnership agreement with Pelham Dogs for council approval, to endorse the fundraising activities so fundraising can occur, and try to get this land for free from Niagara Region. This is an opportunity waiting. To say that the lion's share will be bore by taxpayers is incorrect, Mr. Chair, because what we've heard is the operational costs will be paid by those dog owners using the park. They'll be put on with the fee. There will be other costs, no doubt, associated with the ongoing maintenance. We all know that ongoing maintenance is far more over the life of a facility than the upfront capital costs. The upfront capital costs are going to be shared 50-50. The town does some design work on property. And the dogs group and all of those participating in it, they clean it, they keep it organized, and if they don't, it gets delineated red and yellow and red, and it gets closed. So I think this is a unique opportunity where we work together, just as we've done with other groups, with other recreational aspects, together with this group, to provide a service to our residents. We've seen, Mr. Chair, as the report indicates, this is something that's done elsewhere, close by. Port Colborne did it with their waste facility, with their dump. They converted it over, and we understand it's going very well. You know, this is as the report indicates, the fastest growing recreational services being provided by municipalities. And I think it's not, as the councillor states, it's more a 50-50 partnership with the ongoing operational maintenance costs being borne by those users. I think it's a unique situation for us, Mr. Chair. And just a comment about the budget approval. If it was earmarked, and it was as the treasurer stated, so what's the difference in that? If it wasn't quote unquote earmarked with a report coming back, staff could come forward to us. It's within the purview of the CAO to spend $15,000 on a budgeted item. He could have just come up with us. We could have just received it in a report to say, we spent this money to do the study. No, it's come back to us. So to say, where's this coming from? We asked for it. Here it is. This is the time to say, yes, let's move forward. But I think it's also a time for steps moving forward. We're not saying go ahead full bore. There's a lot of caveats in this report, and there will be opportunities to come back to council. Opportunities for the partnership agreement, opportunities for other aspects to this in terms of other capital expenditures. The remaining portion of this $35,000 that's been earmarked, that's going to come back to council. The utilization of the lands with Niagara Region. So this is a small step, albeit in a direction, but it is a small step, and there's opportunities for council to say no in the future or continue to say yes. So again, Mr. Chair, I am supportive of this. I think it's important to follow along this path and take it where it goes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Papp?
Very quickly, and along those lines, Mr. Mayor, they also maybe we can, as we move forward with this, if it does move forward, is get clarification from City of St. Catharines and Port Colborne. What are their operational? What are the liabilities that they're expending? I know where you're going, Councilor Bibiak, and it's fascinating, even with Vancouver. I mean, it's a larger city. What is the city on the hook for? Like, what's jurisdictionally the responsibility for? What are the responsibility economically for it? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I think this is something that can work, and notwithstanding the fact, Councilor Durley hit the nail on the head too. The region says no, we're done. Unless there's something else that can be done, someplace else to do it. So that's where I feel comfortable with this and moving those small steps forward. Subject to finding out, notwithstanding Councilor Ribiak, what are these other local municipalities that are close by? The Port Colborne one I'm interested in, St. Catharines, is what are they responsible for? What are they paying for? Thank you.
Can I get Mr. Ribiak back? Unless anyone else has any, this will be the last one for me. I'm getting tired of walking around.
Go past that procedural bylaw. Councilor Clark.
Yeah, thank you, Councilor Ribiak. Again, just was discussed there a moment ago by Councilor Pat. The timeline here, again, the first time we came, we said no. The second time we agreed to earmark some money for it. But now we're actually asking for, from what I can see on this, is to approve $15,000 for a design. So now it's starting to cost money. Can we do an amendment or send this back or change this that we follow perhaps Councillor Durley's idea first? Let's first find out if we can get permission from the region before we start spend any money or commit to spending the money or agree to spending the money. Can we get a further commitment? What kind of fundraisers have they planned, and why do they have to wait to start fundraising? I'm not sure what's involved, the legalities of that. I just think we've somehow or another managed to get in front of ourselves spending money on a dog park that we as a council haven't agreed that that's what we want to do. Like, we just seem to be going backwards at it to me. If we want a dog park, then let's vote, let's have a dog park, let's spend the money. If we don't want to have a dog park, let's have a vote, and then we don't spend the money. But right now, we're just kind of jumping ahead in a little bits, and at the end of the day, we're not sure if we want one, but we're going to end up paying for one. So I guess a motion to change the recommendation that we perhaps just do this step by step. Take the first step and see if we can get the land. There's no cost involved, there's a few phone calls, and then this will come back again.
So you have a motion? We need a seconder.
Send it back.
Yeah, so you have someone making a motion to proceed with number 4,
Number 4, which is,
which is direct administration to seek permission to utilize the required lands from the Niagara region.
Let's go in steps, so that would be
Would
my,
you want to divide the motion?
You can do
whatever is procedurally correct. My thrust of this is to do just the one thing, just number 4.
So if you're making a motion to amend the recommendation to strike 1, 2, and 3.
Correct.
And only proceed with number 4, that would be your
At this point in
motion,
time.
and it would need a second.
Okay, so that's my motion, and we strike 1, 2, and 3 and proceed with 4.
I don't see a seconder in this.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Durley. Discussion.
Okay, this doesn't mean that we're not gonna have a dog park, but if we can do it, I think we should approach this. To me, it's already gotten somehow out of queue as to the funds allocated. If we get permission from them on that, at the same time, behind the scenes, we can maybe do some research with the other local municipalities, find out what these things are costing them, what their final cost was, what their ongoing costs are, where they bump their head, where they're having problems, what their solutions would be before we go on. If we're gonna do it, let's do it right. But not just jump out in front and throw a pile of money at it.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Chair, my worry of striking 1, 2, and 3 is what happens to them. So perhaps we should defer 1, 2, and 3 until 4 is done. Because if we strike them,
They're gone.
they're gone. And at the same time, we also need to, I guess it is next, to develop a partnership agreement with Pelham Dogs for council approval. But at minimum, Mr. Chair, I think the motion, if I need to amend it, I will, but I think it needs to be to defer items 1, 2, and 3 and
First, fine.
move ahead with number 4. And then when that's done, then staff can come back and then we can deal with the other items.
Okay, we
Is
change
that,
the
is
word.
that a modification to your,
We can change it to defer.
to the motion?
Fine, yes.
Further discussion?
So we're going to defer 1, 2, and 3, subject to our pending the resolution of the outcome of item 4 with respect to the regional property.
We get the property, then we go to the next step, and the next step, and the next step.
Which is conceptually what I was saying before, sorry, Mr. Chair,
By all means.
that we move forward with the concept of a dog park and all the prerequisites and undertakings that we have to do. Which at any given point, if it sounds like both, like I said before, from a jurisdictional, economic is not of value to us, and we can't do it, then we stop it. If we think we can structure it and let it work with the group, and it works to our, to all of our mutual benefit, then I'd say let's proceed. Okay, I'm clear.
Further discussion? So, with respect to the amendment, all in favor?
Yep, let's find out first.
Carried.
The motion is
I
amended.
think that's the end of it.
Actually, no, that was the amendment. That was the
You have to
amendment.
vote
There
on the
still
main
needs to be a
motion
vote
as
on the
amended.
motion.
Okay.
Are you back for that?
I know my way back.
That's right.
Thank you, Nancy.
On the amended motion, and the amendment is to defer items 1, 2, and 3, and proceed only with number 4.
Okay, so we're gonna vote on the amended motion, which is to defer items 1, 2, and 3, and to proceed with number 4, item number 4. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, I think that is it for me.
Well done, Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Councillor Clark, and welcome to General Committee Planning and Development. First item is moved by Councillor Ribbiak, seconded by Councillor Durley. That report P35/12, application for zoning bylaw amendment, file number AM0312 49 Highway 20 West, Shannon McNiven, be received, and the recommendation contained therein be approved as follows. That for reasons outlined in Planning Report 3512, General Committee Planning and Development Division recommend that Council approve the zoning bylaw amendment application AM03/12 Shannon McNiven for 49 Highway 20 West, part of Block S, Plan 25, now Plan 717, Town of Pelham, and further that staff be directed to prepare the necessary bylaw amendment for consideration by Council. Comments? Members of committee? Councilor Ribbiat.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This subject, of course, was addressed in a public meeting in which there was substantial, and we had the reports here, substantial commentary with regard to implications that might not have been considered by the school at the time, particularly those around traffic. And there were some other comments, I think, too, with regard to use of the property. And of course, I think that we probably have all given this a great deal of thought. And I just wanted to indicate some of the thoughts that I had with regard to the proposal and why I believe it should be approved. I think the traffic problems that were raised by most of the people who made representation are traffic issues that affect that area all the time, school or no school, school notwithstanding. And that the kinds of issues that people were raising were concerns about safety and about speed that are there now, and whether we approve the school or not will continue to be there. And that I think that if anything, the message that I think we should have been getting is that we need to make representation to the region who has jurisdiction over that road to consider what needs to be done with respect to traffic. And if something is done with respect to traffic, then of course that would alleviate concerns that people have regarding their own lives and their own ability to live there, but it would also lift that consideration with regard to the school as well. So I think that one of the things that we need to think about doing seriously is that we take those traffic issues and we address them, we find a way of addressing them, and we consider that it is necessary to address those traffic issues quite apart from the issue of whether there's going to be a school located on that corner. And so to me, I don't know that a school ought to be delayed or put aside just because those traffic issues. Now, there's some question in the report with respect to how serious and overwhelming those traffic issues are. I don't know that an objective report necessarily negates the subjective feelings of people who live in the area and have to deal with those issues themselves and to whom those issues are a factor. So I don't want to minimize that, but I do want to suggest that maybe the traffic and the issues around the traffic are not an issue that has to do with the school and shouldn't necessarily, in my view, impact whether a decision about the school should be there or not. I think the traffic needs to be dealt with, period, full stop. So that's one of the things that I consider. The other thing that I consider is with respect to the use of that property going forward. I think most people in the area would prefer that the property remain a residence. It has been for sale as a residence for some period of time. I think it must be reasonably clear that it's difficult, if not really difficult, to consider that the future of that property is as a single-family residence going forward, which means, of course, that it will be purchased and put to some other use, and that this council will at some point in time be looking at an application, quite possibly, for some different form of use for that property. And at some point, council is going to have to consider and accept something. And I'm not sure that, given the nature of the community there that there's much more constructive or positive use that can be put to a property in that residential area than as a school for, I guess, a school for preschoolers, a preschool for young kids. It seems to me that that would be one of the really benign and beneficial uses to which that property can be put to in that area. We could easily be sitting looking at other kinds of institutional uses for that property that could legitimately come forward. One had in the past and had been turned down, as I can recall from the representations that were made. There are probably a variety of things that we can all think of that might not be as acceptable going forward as a school of this nature. So I'd like to encourage us to vote in favor of this. Give ourselves, we'll have, of course, another opportunity to consider it when it comes to council. But I think in the overall picture of things, if a residential area has a preschool, which makes the area that much more attractive for those looking for residences that have access to that sort of amenity, it seems to me that that's a pretty positive move that could be made. Anyway, those are my thoughts, and I would urge us to accept the report and the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Ribbiak. Councillor Durley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now, a question through you to Mr. Mannell. If in fact the use of this property becomes a school, does now the Highway Traffic Act say that the speed limit is reduced to 40 and the signage, proper signage of school zone is applied to that stretch? Would that apply in this case?
I wouldn't think so. I think it has to be more of a public type school, not simply a residential or a private school.
Okay, because I've seen that in places where Montessori and so on is, but that's an argument for another day. So, okay, that was just a question that I had. And having driven that at various times during the day, certainly it's a busy stretch of road, but it's not the 401 on Labor Day weekend. Also, the school as it now sits on South Pelham Street, which is also a busy street, I have never heard of any problems with people being put on and off, in and out of cars attending there. So, I'm saying the increased traffic, if there's going to be increased traffic, I don't think we'll have the impact. I think, as Councilor Ribbiak does say, the traffic conditions on Highway 20 West are there whether or not this is a school, and certainly it has been proven, I believe, that nothing has happened. There's been no impact on South Pelham Street either, so, with the same operation. So I see we deal with the traffic issue, not the school issue. So that's just a comment. Thank you.
Any other comments? Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. First, a question. In the report on page 8, where we're talking about parking, paragraph near the bottom, it says that the issue pertaining to parking and off-street accommodation of vehicles may be addressed through site plan control. The word may as opposed to will or shall. Maybe I want to play a lawyer on TV as opposed to be one, but just looking for some clarity regarding that from our director, Mr. Chair.
Yes, it's, I mean, we can argue around words as we have lots of times. If the application is approved, the issue will be addressed through site plan control.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chair, other council colleagues have spoken about the considerable input we've had from the community on this. It speaks, it's in the package as well, letters both for and against. The overwhelming issue was traffic, and as has been stated before, I didn't hear, Mr. Chair, we did hear that there would be a public information session regarding the environmental assessment of that area. I don't know if staff heard anything about when that would be. It was supposed to be at some point in the summer. I don't know if Mr. Mannell heard anything, Mr. Chair, about a public information session. No, I hadn't either. So I need to follow up with the region on that. I think the point is well taken, Mr. Chair, that whatever goes here, the issue of traffic in that area is of concern. I think of note, two items. One, there will be some trimming of the bushes and a daylighting or site triangle there, so that that will be forever there to ensure that there will be vision as people are turning in and out. But also, this application will make the traffic, or hopefully potentially make the traffic better, because it will remove the driveway from the front of Regional Road 20 and use that entrance just off of the side street. So that will actually make things better with this application. I think Councillor Ribbiak hit it on the head about the other potential uses for this property. I mean, we heard a gentleman at the public meeting talk about he's next in line to buy the property if this doesn't get approved, and no doubt it's conditional on this. And you know, he wants to carve it up for apartments. So that is one of the potential uses there, and you know, no doubt there'd be issues there as well that would be raised by neighbors. So on balance, Mr. Chair, I think this is you know, I am in favor of this. I think all of the considerations are addressed both in the report regarding traffic. It is an issue that needs to be addressed at the region, and that's some work that I think we need to follow up on. And other issues regarding parking, et cetera, will be dealt with. We just heard through site plan control. So it is an allowable use in the residential area, and I know it does require a change, but I think it's would be an important addition to the area. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Clark.
I have concerns about the traffic on that intersection, same as everyone else. Not to be negative to Councillor Durley's comments, but the Glen A. Green School, it is designated. It's got stop signs. It's got crossing guards. It's been there for, I don't know, 40 years or something. Everybody knows there's a school there. It also has 3 or 4 entrances off 2 different streets on the corner there. Whereas this is on the top of a hill onto a residential street. I'm feeling for the you know, the local residents that bought their homes because they like, you know, that street, because there is no commercial business area, even though they are very close to Highway 20. But I mean, those homes are were built probably from the 50s on up. It's a very beautiful subdivision. If that building were to be carved into 4 or 6 apartments, there's only 4 or 6 cars. It's not 35 cars or whatever it is. So those are my concerns. I think that the school would be a great asset to Pelham. I just don't think this is, in my opinion, I'm only one person, is the location for it. So I will not be voting in favor of it.
Any further comments? Mr. Mayor, can you take the chair for a minute?
Councillor Pap?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've spent a considerable amount of time going and reviewing and trying to come to grasp with the proposed bylaw amendment, and notwithstanding the fact that it is compliant with all of the zoning requirements, the concerns for traffic are still a major one. And I'm still struggling with the best, is this the best possible use for this building? And I understand, Councilor Ribbick, you're right, this building has been up for sale for quite a few years. There's been several applications made over the years, 2 or 3 that were turned down, and I do kind of understand what the residents of that area are accustomed to, and the question, though, is if this doesn't proceed, then what's next? You know, what'll happen? Will there be someone who'll come along and purchase it and make it, and we'll go through the same thing again? I'm still not sure, and in all of the respect to the applicant, that you know, whether this is the best location, whether there's other possibilities. So quite frankly, I would feel more comfortable, and just as a question, with respect to the region's concerns, the region addressing the traffic concerns, how long, through you, Mr. CEO, or Mr. Mayor, to the plan, how long would this take to get some sort of answer on how they would reconcile this before the bylaw came back to approve the zoning bylaw?
Not clear
Well,
what they would, how they
I mean,
reconcile.
if this is approved, it comes to council on September the 4th, I presume.
That's correct, with the
All
zoning
right.
bylaw.
In the meantime, there's these concerns with the region. Are those subject to site plan control? Or are they over and above, like whatever changes that the region would want to incorporate? Because there is several suggestions made by the region that they want to see happen along that, unless I'm mistaken, sight lines, relocate existing access. Are these all part of the site plan control?
Those would be addressed through the site plan agreement,
The
yes.
region's concerns.
Yes.
And other concerns.
And any other related concerns. Anyhow, I'll just leave it at that. I'm not quite sure. I'm not. All right,
Do you want me to stay here when we do the vote? Are we ready to vote, or do you want to?
I'll come back and then we'll.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Any further comments? Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. All right, next before us, moved by Councillor Durley, seconded by Councillor Ribbiak, the report P36/12, application for zoning bylaw amendment, file number AM0412, 952 Foss Road, Ronald M. Roy be received, and the recommendation contained therein be approved as follows. That for reasons outlined in Planning Report 3612, General Committee Planning and Development Division, recommend that council approve zoning bylaw amendment application AM04/12, Ronald M. Roy for 952 Foss Road, part of lots 19 and 20, concession 11, former township of Pelham, now town of Pelham. And further, the staff be directed to prepare the necessary bylaw amendment for consideration by council. Comments or questions? Hearing none. All in favor? Carried. Next, moved by Councillor Durley, seconded by Councillor Ribbiak, the report P37/12, proposed sign bylaw be received, and the recommendation contained therein be approved as follows. That General Committee Planning and Development Division receive report P3712 regarding a proposed sign bylaw for the information purposes, and further, that General Committee Planning and Development Division recommend that Council adopt the Town of Pelham sign bylaw as provided in attachment number 1 to this report. Comments or questions? Councillor Ribbiak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a couple of comments, if I may. The first one, I just want to commend CEO. He and I had a discussion earlier in which I made a suggestion with regard to reports like this being submitted to council without having a clear indication of where the changes were, and indicated to him that I had spent some time putting a spreadsheet together to determine what the differences are, and I think he has, with great enthusiasm, adopted the view that perhaps in future that's the way we would see these, and it might be a little easier for us then to make a comparison between the old and the new versions of the bylaw. So thank you very much for that, Mr. CAO. I have two quick observations. Generally, I found the changes that were proposed to be excellent. Great steps in the right direction. I think some modernization of the sign bylaw that was much needed. There are two areas that are of interest to me. One is, I don't know how significant it is, probably not very, but the other I think has some greater significance. So let me start with the lesser and then move to the greater. Nowhere in the new bylaw was addressed the signage that is incorporated into the, for want of a better term, the decoration of the building. You'll recall in days gone by, people would offer to paint barns and use the opportunity to put great big advertisements on the sides of barns. A more modern version of that is the ability to project on an entire building signage using lasers or whatever the technology might be. That's not addressed in the report. I don't know that there's any particular need to, because I don't know that anyone is proposing to put a sign like that up. But since we've covered virtually every other kind of sign possible, maybe some consideration should be done to whether signs like that need to be addressed as well. Fairly minor, again. I don't know how many opportunities there will be for that to happen. The other issue that was of great interest to me was to note that the new version of the bylaw excluded a clause that existed in the old version, in which council had the ability to reject signs on the basis of their content, if in the opinion of council the content of the sign was considered to be either indecent or contributing to corruption. I think the words were. I don't have the clause immediately in front of me. I don't approach this lack from any moralistic perspective, any judgmental perspective. I don't think I'm naive, and I don't think that I can claim to have any particular knowledge of what is or is not decent. But I think I have a sense that there are probably signs that are possible within the definitions of signs as presented in the new bylaw, which might be objectionable to the people of Pelham. I can think of perfectly legitimate businesses that exist that would be considered generally as at least unsavory, if not otherwise. And signage associated with those, for example, might prove to be beyond the pale for the tolerance of people within Pelham, both in terms of words, and we can all think of words that we wouldn't want to see on signs, in terms of images, in terms of concepts, symbols, that would be a problem, and that when those problems are encountered, I think the people of the town might want to come to council and say, would you do something about that? And I think that it would be a good idea if we had within our ability the right to make pronouncements with regard to signs that might be considered unacceptable against some particular standard. And I guess the standard is one of just public acceptance. I think you yourself, Mr. Chair, indicated an experience that you had in another town in another country in which the signage was probably something that you wouldn't want to see on South Pelham. And if it should appear there, I think you would probably agree with me that it would be useful for the council to have the ability to say, no, that sign's got to be changed out. So in losing those words, and I don't know that I agree necessarily with what the sense of the old language that's on some sort of moral basis we ought to be making decisions about signs, but I think that we ought to reserve for ourselves the right to remove signs that the public might find objectionable. We are in a position to make those judgments. We, for example, conduct our own business with an eye to what is, I guess in our terms, parliamentary or not parliamentary. We have real sense of what words, what concepts, what ideas we can't use here, and probably if we can't use it here, it probably ought not to appear on signs elsewhere. So I think the judgment that we could exercise with regard to content when it comes to that sort of thing would be pretty good judgment. And I just wonder whether we can't put into the new bylaw a provision that when we, in our opinion, determine that something ought not to exist on a sign, that we should have the right to have that sign altered or removed or whatever. And I don't know whether that will require a motion. I don't know whether we're at the point in our discussions whether we're doing motions or simply giving guidance to staff. But this is something that I would like to see us address.
So let's just hold that thought, because, and I'll let others speak to it. That is a situation that did occur with this council a number of years ago. But let's just leave that for the time being, and I'm going to reference that. I'm going to, if you want to call it, bookmark that just for the time being.
Absolutely.
And I'll come back to it. Any other comments about the sign bylaw?
I'd be remiss,
Counselor Durr.
yeah, I'd be
Go
remiss
right
if
ahead.
I didn't say anything, Mr. Chair,
Absolutely.
having chaired this, the committee. First of all, a word of appreciation to the chief building official and manager of bylaw enforcement for a job well done in assembling this proposed bylaw. The process was long and drawn out and very complex in its scope. The coordination of this bylaw is affected by other legislation such as the Municipal Act, zoning bylaws, building codes, and so on, created many challenges along the way. Special thanks go out to the assigned committee members representing the PBA, the Chamber of Commerce, and the agricultural community for their time, energy, and positive input during the process. This living document, if accepted, will eliminate many of the confusing points that were present in the existing sign bylaw, making compliance much easier and enforcement much less challenging. If adopted, I anticipate a transition period where our enforcement staff will have the opportunity to educate those affected by this bylaw, and the result will be a much more uniform environment considering the needs of the folks who rely on signs to do their business and the impact that signs do have on our community. Now, going on with what Councillor Ribiak has said, perhaps that could be an amendment to that under Section 5, prohibited signs, that would eliminate the possibility for anything indecent or immoral to be in there. And I think that certainly is a very good point, and having experienced, at least on one occasion, something that really blew up, probably farther than it should have. However, to have that in place certainly would be very beneficial. So that's really all I have to say, and I thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Councillor Durham. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Councillor Pop. I took the time today to make a few phone calls, and I spoke to Tim McAvoy, the president of the Pelham Business Association, and Tom, I can't think of his name, but he was on the McIntyre, thank you. He was on the sign committee. And in conversations with them today, I told them that this was coming forward tonight for our approval. And both of them expressed a number of concerns, but their largest concern to me today was that they were under the impression that they were going to see this report one more time to make sure that the comments that they had made were that changes were made. And I guess they were quite concerned that did not happen. They mentioned a number of things to me, but I don't want to get into being that's not where I'm going with this. Where I'm going with this is that we asked these people to be a part of it, and it seems like we're just one step short with them. And the last part I've got to ask to this is the power of entry part. Was that the PBA and the chamber, are they aware that that's in here, and are they aware of how that is written in here? Because I mean, what I would like to see happen with the sign bylaw myself is that, I know this has been a long drawn out process and everyone's worked very hard on it, and we're very close to the end, but let's get it 100% right. We're this close. If they want to have another look at it, will 3 or 4 weeks hurt anything? I don't know. I mean, it's difficult because I know they don't always come out in great numbers, but I think that the representatives that we had, at least from my experience with the PBA, you had 2 very strong members from that association that represent 90 businesses here in town. So I'm of the opinion that from what I gathered from speaking to these two gentlemen today, that this really should go back and be discussed with them one more time to make sure that that is what they want, and that they're prepared to have their, local businesses and their members live by, that at least we give them a chance to look at the final document.
Councillor Durley, if I may ask, was the protocol, is this, just for a matter of clarification, the way the report's written, it says to receive this for information purposes. Are we, in fact, it's just to receive for information, or are we actually asking to approve the signed bylaw?
Actually, the second clause says for council to recommend it, or to adopt it at the next meeting, so, in fact, it's two-edged, and I'm not sure Keegan is in the gallery. We did have several chances for them to input. However, were not given a copy of this before it was given to this general committee. If I may,
Yeah, by all means,
through you to
Councilor, I
Mr.
just
Jennings.
want some clarification on what the understanding is with the groups that participate in the development of this, just so we're clear, because we're getting different messages.
Yeah,
By all means.
Our last sign committee meeting, we did propose, I showed them the proposed bylaw with some minor amendments that need to be done. Their comments were received and inputted into them. The minor amendments were the power of entry, because that was still being dealt with at the council level. And there were some other minor amendments, things like permit fees were not addressed. We still had to do kind of outline of what the bylaw was for. It's just more or less a cover sheet to go onto the front of the bylaw, and that's still being constructed now.
In fact,
Go ahead, Councilor.
my recollection is that all of the input that was brought from the PBA and from the chamber were addressed and discussed at these meetings, and the information was in draft form put on paper, and they were of the understanding that what they had is being addressed. The only thing that they haven't had a chance to is to read it. I guess this is what I'm hearing is the problem, or is the challenge that they're facing, and I think we can. Is it possible to give them an opportunity to go through it, just to see that everything is there? Now, everything that everybody said certainly wouldn't be incorporated in here, because that we have to deal with, number one, the concerns of how we enforce, and certainly there'll be a lot of different opinions as to what proper enforcement is, and in fact, our staff needs to do the enforcing, so we need to be the vehicle by which that clause is there for sure. However, certainly I know a lot of the input that was there, and we had a couple of meetings where it basically ping pong back and forth some ideas, and I believe from what my notes said during the meetings that you did incorporate these in here. However, they haven't had the opportunity to see it. So,
Mr. Mayor and Councilor Ruby, I'll get to in 1 second, if I can let the CAO respond.
Mr. Chair, I could say for the information of council that a member of staff that was involved in constructing any bylaw would not have the authority to release that to members of the public prior to it coming to council. That is something that, as a matter of good administration, would take place. The recommendation that I would have, as well as it being a legislative requirement of the Act, but what I might recommend to council in this particular case is that you consider the recommendation, and once you've endorsed this to send to council, you can then at that point direct that staff send a copy to affected people or allow them to look at it. That would be the proper process to follow. But again, for the chief building officer or even myself to release a draft copy of bylaw that had not been approved or seen by council would not be appropriate.
Thank you, Mr. CAO. Mr. Mayor, and then Councilor Ribbiak.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Certainly, I appreciate the information and all of that, and certainly I appreciate the work of Councilor Durley and staff and members of the chamber and the PBA and the agricultural community that have put this together. It is a number, as Councilor Durley indicated, a number of years in the making. I think it was in 2008 that this committee was first struck, so it has been a number of years in the making. Mr. Chair, Council will remember, or committee will remember, that there was a bit of an issue that arose this year that prompted this to kind of come to a head, I think, a little bit in a different way. And that was a letter from the Chamber of Commerce expressing concern from some members regarding the sign bylaw. So a meeting was held in this chamber late January, early February, and a number of issues were talked about at that time, and they were being addressed, and we were, business owners, the chamber members, PBA members, et cetera, were given assurance by the chief building officer that those items were addressed, and many of them were issues about inside on the windows and outside the windows and those kind of things. So kudos to staff for addressing those as they indicated. One item, Mr. Chair, that was highlighted by members of the business community, specifically in the downtown area, related to sandwich board signs. I think the bylaw is, and I'm trying to remember all of the iterations of it and the locations, et cetera, but the sandwich board signs are allowed if they meet the certain requirements. They can be very close to the property line, but they still are required to be on private property. Thank you. But it's quite clear in the bylaw that it's not allowed on public property. There was a request for, especially businesses in Font Hill and Ridgeville, where they don't really, where the building front is essentially the property line, so they don't have an opportunity to have the sandwich board. And so just wondering, and maybe this is one of those items that Councillor Durley spoke about, that not everything could be incorporated, but just looking for some more clarity on that. Mr. Chair, regarding the issue of sandwich board signs, there was discussion of, well, there must be a best practice for this, designated area that you could put the sign. This business could put this sign here, enter into an agreement with the town, et cetera. So just want to hear more about that, Mr. Chair.
All right. Would you like Mr. Keegan to?
Whoever is the most appropriate.
Mr. Jennings, would you like to address that, if everyone's okay with that?
The proposed
Jennings?
bylaw is strictly for signs on private property. The sign committee had discussions about this, and we're looking at a secondary bylaw to deal with signs on public property. So that's how that was going to be looked at.
Mr. Larmer, if you may, sorry, go right ahead.
Thank you. And one of the issues that we're having with that is exactly what the previous delegation had brought up earlier tonight, was what's the liability that the municipality faces in allowing private signs and other facilities to be located in the road allowance. We've talked to the insurer a little bit about that, and to our solicitors, and that was just going to be another facet of the bylaw that was really going to slow down moving forward what we had to date. So, as Mr. Jennings accurately stated, this bylaw deals with the private property, and a separate bylaw can be presented for encroachments onto the public property.
Which, without putting words in your mouth, is forthcoming? Or is it necessary at this point, or are you in the process of developing
I
that?
would be misleading you to say we had a rival date scheduled.
Okay. Well, it seems to
And
be.
I'm not intending to mislead you. It's a bigger issue. It's
Bigger
something
issue.
that we'll have to deal with, just like we're dealing with parking and
Yeah.
yeah. But it's something that we're intending to deal with. We're going to look at what other municipalities are doing and kind of establish our own best practice as to what to do in the town of Pelham. I mean, there's one thing, one side of the bylaw is accommodating the desires of the business owners and the people who need signs. The other side is protecting the interest of the public.
Right.
So we're finding that balance here, and while some of the representatives on the sign committee may feel that all of their concerns weren't addressed and that the bylaw doesn't have provision to accommodate everything that they want, we have to hold that in balance with what is in the interest of the public in terms of the aesthetics of the area and also the safety. So.
And thank you. Mr. Mayor, then I got a Councilor Ribbiak?
My question was asked and answered, so.
Go back,
Well, I
Mr. Mayor.
think it's important, especially because it, you know, the room was packed and it was an issue that a number of them, not all of them, you know, talked about. So I think it'd be important to, when we get feedback from them, to say, look, this is going to be coming in the future. But I think, Mr. Chair, you know, we missed the season for sandwich board signs is not when Mr. Mantle and his crew is out there clearing all the sidewalks. It's in the spring, summer, and fall. So although its arrival is not expected soon, let's hope its gestation period isn't that long, and that, Mr. Chair, this portion of the bylaw, I think should, you know, we really should work on it to get it out for next spring, so that it's an issue that business owners will either have concluded one way or another. Yes, it's allowed. No, it's not. You know, I think this council needs to make that determination. Hear about best practices. There are others I know that are doing it, and others that say they will not do it for all of the reasons, safety concerns, et cetera, that was given in a delegation. So, you know, I think as part of this, I hope it's understood that issue should be coming forward for next year, when those sandwich boards would be ready and start growing in our community. Thank you.
Any other comments? There's two things that I've heard here, and one is that getting back, bookmarking that issue, I do think we need to clarify through legal purposes too, the possibility or the possible inclusion of a content clause that would, a clause that would give us the ability to assess, for that matter, determine whether certain language on signage is appropriate. I would like to have, if you all agree, is because we went through this before, and we need to be very clear on what jurisdictional ability we have or we don't have. Because, you know, some municipalities got into big trouble with this. And notwithstanding that, we don't want to make it open season. The second part is, and I agree, Councillor Durley, that in my discussions with Councillor Clark talked to the PBA, I talked to the Chamber. I think it behoove us that if following the adoption of this, that we immediately, the following day, tomorrow, send out a copy of this to the members of the committee, particularly the Chamber, the PBA, and whoever else was on there, if there's an agreement, so they have a chance to at least look at this, and that maybe will close the loop on that particular part, if all of you are in agreement with that. I think that was just a concern. It's not a criticism of anything, it's just, then you're right, Mr. CEO, you can't release this information without us first scrutinizing it. So if you're agreeable with that, go ahead, Councilor Ribbiak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just for clarification, are you looking for a motion that this issue be considered by legal and appropriate words be brought back that would give us that opportunity? Because I'd like to make that motion.
I think you're going to, I would think, Madam Clerk, I'm not sure, Councilor Durley?
I believe legal has had a look at this, and we'll clear this through Mr. Jennings. I'm sure that at least one point in time, I know there was reference to legal having a look at it, and I think there was even more than one time that we got legal advice, but he knows he'd let the experts.
If you can help us with this specifically deals with, you know, the issue of content of signs.
This issue was brought up through the chamber, through our committee. The question was brought forward to the town solicitor. There was no real defined answer on it. It never is, right? It comes down to amendment rights of the sign owner. And yes, we have a bylaw that talks about content and corruption and all these other things and demoralize, but that is opinion-based. And that's where the issue becomes. And it becomes a court's issue, not more of a council issue. If council wants to put that in, they can. It's just if it gets challenged, it's going to court.
That's where I was going, because we had, some of you may be familiar, we had that exact issue happen to us. Go ahead, Councilor Ribbiak.
Thank you. It seems to me that if someone put up a sign which was viewed by the community as inappropriate, and I don't want to talk about morality or, you know, potential to corrupt or demoralizing, because I don't know what those words mean either. But I do have a pretty good sense of what, for example, Anglo-Saxonisms are generally not accepted in common usage here or elsewhere. And I have a pretty good sense of what images might be considered offensive, and that I think that we collectively within this council would be able to do that. And I think that if we reserve for ourselves the ability to make the statement when something of that nature occurs, that we might be able to put that word out there. And if it's going to be challenged, then I think that that's a challenge that we ought to be prepared and willing to take, because our role is to provide some sort of standard, some sort of limit to how people can step on the rights of others or deal with the sensitivities of others. And if someone put up a sign that was clearly inappropriate, and we were to find ourselves challenged on that basis, I think that's a challenge that we ought to be prepared to take on, win or lose. We need the right to be able to give guidance.
Thank
I
you.
think the CAO may have something to say.
Yeah, by all means, Mr. CEO.
Mr. Chair, it's a particularly interesting issue. There's human rights issues involved. There's potentially hate legislation. There's all sorts of things. What I would recommend to council at this point is that you proceed with the recommendation with perhaps direction to administration to include an addendum for the next council meeting that perhaps provides some language around the issue for your consideration of
Consultation of legal.
But I would like to talk to legal prior to
Yes.
this. I think that it is very much a legal issue that we should be getting legal advice on, and then debate the issue once you have an idea of the
Comfortable with
context of which legal is coming
That
from.
works.
And if I may, Mr. Chair, so
ahead.
that is direction that the CAO is taking, or is that a motion that you want us to make to give them that direction?
Mr. Chair, I think that the recommendation I would give to council is you simply give that direction to me tonight. Then I can come back with an addendum or a memo that would be attached to the bylaw when it hit the regular council meeting, and you consider that issue at that time.
All of you in agreement with that? Then that makes it easier, and then he will deal with it and consult with our staff and legal resources to address that. Okay, any other further comments or questions? Hearing none? All in favor of the recommendation? Carried. Thank you.
Word.
I'm trying.
It has been moved by Councillor Clark, second by Councillor Papp, this regular meeting of General Committee be adjourned until the next regular meeting scheduled for Tuesday, September 4th, 2012, unless sooner called by the mayor. I note that it is a Tuesday because of Labor Day. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. That motion is carried. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.